Hello and welcome. My name is Philip Ramos, and thank you so much for joining us today here in the Strength Studio. I'm super excited to bring another great interview with you here today, just to show you, to help you get inspired of other people's story, other people's journey. How are they utilizing their strengths? What are some of their struggles that they faced? And relate to them, right? Can I connect with them in a much different way, in a more human way? So today we're going to be interviewing Rachel Lynch, and I had an opportunity to do our pre-interview, heard her story, and I'm telling you what, I've had goosebumps for the last few days, telling little tidbits, little things here of like, oh, I can't wait for you to hear this, or did you know this? And it was so much fun to be able to connect with people and hear their struggles, hear their journey, connect some of those dots. So Rachel Lynch, now she is a founder 2.0, Blue Diamond, mother, adopted children. I mean, she's run the gamut of all kinds of different things, and she's had some absolutely incredible success. So Rachel, without any further ado, I want to turn the time over to you. Introduce yourself. Tell the people that are watching this interview, get them a chance to kind of peek behind the curtain and to get to know you in your personal life. You know, what are the roles you play? What are the things? Who are you basically?
All right. Thank you, Philip. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my story. So this is going to be a unique opportunity for me because I've really never opened up and shared with everyone our story. But I am a wife and mother of 4 children. We were told we would never have children, so we started the adoption process. And by the time we actually got 2 boys in our home, ages 5 and 3, I was 6 months pregnant with our daughter. So instantly I had a family, a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and an infant. And I would look at my husband and he would say, "What didn't we like about a quiet house?" I said, "I don't know." It was
That's great.
wild. And I didn't know anything about natural. I didn't know that you could use balance and serenity to help these kids be calm and help our emotions. Because that was a big adjustment. You going from 6 years never having any kids in your home to all of a sudden, boom, you've got a homemade family.
Right.
And so then later on, I had my baby. And he's now 15. So my youngest is 15, oldest is 25, and just very blessed to have our children and our family, and love life and doing life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Good for you. That and I would imagine, right? You going from where you're at all of a sudden to blossoming into a full-blown garden, right? So
Oh, absolutely.
that's pretty incredible. Now, I just want to make sure that we really folks take time, because I was so many people see you in where you're at today, right? And I think that that's something that happens across the board in life. We use social media, Instagram, Facebook, we see where people are at, the trips they're taking, the things that they're doing, and we often just look at that and be like, oh man, they got lucky, or everything was easy for them, or it was smooth sailing. And we don't often really get to see what the journey really looks like. So, and talking with you, it sounds like you had, quite the journey yourself. So in starting your network marketing journey, talk first about what your first, because what the first part of the journey looked like, right? What did you guys do? How did you guys get started? Kind of break some of that down to where you kind of hit this plateau, if you were, or your struggle.
Okay, perfect. So we actually had a very remarkable start in doTERRA, and my belief in the company soared very quickly because we were introduced to doTERRA, and I was like, I will never ever do the business. I just want to keep my baby alive. So our baby was born with, and he's 15 now. So this was 15 years ago, this coming May. Every night he would stop breathing.
Oh,
And he was on 2 different steroids 3 times a day just to keep him alive.
wow.
And the doctors had just told us in May, right before I was introduced to doTERRA, that this child will never walk, talk, or interact with you. Basically, he's just going to be, surviving. And so when we were introduced, we were in North Carolina. We had 5 of the best specialists in North Carolina from Duke as his doctor. Taking him, usually I was at an appointment with him at least every week. I had another appointment with him, and I personally was just surviving myself, and I would never lay in bed and sleep. I would sit up in bed holding him, waiting for him to stop breathing. When he did, which he did multiple times a night, I
Mm.
would get my husband awake. He would get the lights on, and we would just beat him on the back. Come on, Kevin, breathe, please. Come on, breathe. And just in that terror of, when is my baby going to die? Um,
Right.
and so that was our life for his first 6 months of life. And then here comes doTERRA and enters our life. And I remember this aunt of my husband said, try these oils. I'm like, you're kidding me. And we said it was voodoo. We said, we named all the things like this is
Official,
stupid.
yeah, your
You
snake
know,
oils, right?
we called her the snake oil lady. We did
Yeah.
everything. And she said, just try it. Just put it on his feet. And I'm like, whatever. We'll see her at a reunion in a few years. It's not going to work. And we're still going to be. I was a very introverted person at that point because you go from having to just survive basically in our lives there. And I put it on his feet, didn't think anything about it, went home that night, went to bed. One time that night, he had a little tiny episode, but before we could get the lights on, he was already breathing normal again. And I'm like, that's very interesting. Like, what
Sure.
is this stuff in this bottle that this lady put on
It's
my
snake
baby?
oil, right?
What is the snake oil about? I need to. So I saw her the next day and I was like, whatever that was, I need to learn about it.
Wow.
And so at that point, I didn't sign up with this big every oil kit. I was like, I will get, breathe and I'll get digestin, right? And those are my two oils I started with. But those two oils right there changed his life and our world forever. And so I'm ever grateful for those times of what we went through because now we can help so many other people. But during that time, I'm over here learning about the oils. Didn't really, know everything that I was doing, but I was experiencing, little changes in him, and I loved what I was seeing.
Yeah.
Then at a year old, he still wasn't moving, and so I called this lady back up. I hadn't ordered any more oils, but the breathe and the frankincense, and those last a long time. Those little bottles, they
Yeah, they can.
they lasted for 6 months, and so I called her on the way for our son's MRI, and I said, what could I do if my son had a neurological issue? And she said, oh, you've got to use some frankincense, right? So I started doing that. And within just a short amount of time, we started seeing, all right, he's not moving. Now he's sitting up. 2 months later, he's crawling. And we were just like one thing right after the other. I'm like, this kid is we're going to beat the odds. We're going to do things
He's
that
gonna make
doctors,
it. Yeah.
we're going to make it. And there was one time, and again, my belief isn't my number one strength. So I was seeing, and the therapist said, what are you doing different? I said, I'm using something called frankincense. She says, that can't be it. I said, well, I don't know, but I'm gonna keep using it. She said, yeah, go ahead and use it, but it can't be really changing all these things. And I was like, well, we'll see. And but there was a time where I had a little bit of well, okay, I ran out of the oils, and oils cost money, right?
Sure.
And so I was like, is it in my head? Were they really working? Maybe the breathe and the on guard at that point, because I branched out and got an on guard as well. I says, maybe they really weren't, maybe it was in my mind.
Mm.
And so I ran out of oils. And within a very short amount of time, we were back in Duke PICU for a week. And my husband said, Rachel, do you realize it's cost me more in gas to come visit you every night, because he would be going back and forth trying to, do his job at work, construction, and then in the evening coming and visit us in the hospital. He said, it's cost me more in gas than it would have cost to get a bottle of Breathe.
Yeah.
And to get a bottle, on guard.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, I'm like, okay, at that point, I was like, I have to learn everything there is about doTERRA. So I bought me, a book, a resource book, so I could learn how to, really know what I was talking about in doTERRA. And then at about a year into it, people started coming to me and said, I don't know what you're doing, but we know you have something that you're using on your son. So tell us about it, because my dad needs help, or my mom needs help. And so I wasn't active. And in fact, I told the person that signed me up, I said, I will never, ever do the business. I am just doing this to keep my kid alive.
Yeah.
And so from there, when people started asking me, like, what are you doing? Like, we know you have something powerful. And so I started sharing with people, my friends, people in my church, and everybody started having remarkable, results from this. I had no clue, about the business. I was just having fun, helping people get their accounts. And we were just having fun at doTERRA. Didn't know that it could actually, turn into a business as per se. And I remember one day my husband said, because at that point we got on the Loyalty Rewards program and, things like that. And I was having to spend 100 PV. And my husband said, you know what? If you don't really start making enough to pay for these products, why don't you just, instead of thinking you're doing it as a hobby. Just, just order when you want to, and don't think of it as a business. It's like, okay. So he said, because at that point I'm like, oh, it's kind of fun to help people.
Yeah.
So I made, I think, $10 more than what he said we needed to make.
Yeah.
And so I looked at him, I said, I guess we're all in, right? Because you'd put at that point, I made $10 more. And so at that point, I personally jumped all in. And he was very, very supportive of me doing this. And so we jumped in the business and quickly started rank advancing because I just felt like the whole world needed to hear what's, about these oils that could change their lives. And everybody was seeing results. And so that's kind of how we started in the business. When my husband, when we hit, actually, when we were hit silver, we were, brand new silvers that month. And we were at a little place in South Carolina where they were having a little event, and David Sterling came there.
Hmm.
And he looked at my husband. He says, when do you plan to quit your job and join your wife? And it was like, we had never even considered that at all.
Right,
And
right.
on the way home that night, we had a 4-hour drive, and we started imagining and dreaming, like, what if you could? Like, at that point, I was very busy trying to help
Sure.
all these people, and plus do therapy because my kids was there in therapy, and it was a big load on me. And I was like,
Sure.
and David told us, he said, 2 is better than 1, and when you quit your job and join your wife, you're going to go far in DoTerra. And so that was in November. In May, we hit gold. And my husband quit his job when we hit gold,
That's
and
amazing.
which was a leap of faith because we had 4 children,
Sure.
and gold income at that, it was nice, but it wasn't diamond pay.
Right, right. It wasn't, hey, let's, we're okay forever income, right?
Exactly. It was a leap of faith,
Yeah.
but we made it work, and we worked really hard and quickly. We got to diamond in 2015, and just events. We did events. We just told everybody about doTERRA because we loved it and we believed in it, and we had a story to share.
Mm, that's so amazing, and I love kind of what you said. Number one, obviously you started with this experience and then you question it, right? And I think that happens so often is we have this positive experience, whether with product or business or things, and then we all of a sudden we get to a point where we start to look at it financially and say, I don't know if it's worth it, right? I don't know if I should do this. So in 2 different ways, you did that with the oils, and then he realized, wait, it's definitely worth the gas. And then the second thing, you're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe we should do this business. Wait, I'm making $10 more. Let's go all in, right? And I think that that's such a wonderful example where so many people, and you and I talked a little bit about this when we did our pre-interview, that concept of 3 feet from gold, right? Imagine where your life would be if you would have said, if you wouldn't have given credit to maybe the oils, or that maybe your husband would have said, hey, it's too expensive, and not make the comparison to the gas, right?
Yeah.
Or if you would have been making, $10 less versus $10 more. And it's so, I think so often, especially in doing these or other people's stories, how quickly we throw in the towel into something that could dramatically change our life. And it sounds like obviously you guys went on an adventure of a lifetime and were able to create so many great changes for yourself. That's amazing. That in itself is inspiring. I love that.
And even now, looking back at Kevin's journey, really, and the reason we started doTERRA, now he's 15, and he's surpassed everything the doctor said. I mean, just the other day, he rode 17 miles on his bicycle with his dad. And I mean, just one thing after another thing. And he told me the other day, he says, Mom, if it wasn't for doTERRA, I wouldn't be able to do these things. So he recognizes it. And in the meantime, there are other children with Kevin's same issue, which is not very common.
Sure.
But I was able to walk into someone's home within the last year, and I saw their child, and I'm like, oh, I know what your child's problem is. And they said, what? We have spent thousands of dollars and nobody can figure it out. I said, oh, he's just like my son, and I can tell you what he needs. And now, just 2 weeks ago, I went back to that home to check on that child, and now he's sitting up good, and he's making all this progress. And I'm like, and now he's starting to crawl, and I'm like, this. We have, and even those trials, and I had trials in my life, and you've had trials in your life, but even with a child, and sometimes I would even, question, like, God, why did you let Kevin be born with all of the health issues that he has? I mean, like, seriously, could a child have more than this? But now the blessing that I've been able to be to other families and say, oh, I know what your child needs. And I've been able to help those children as well. So everything works together for good, right? And I love how we can just credit God knowing and giving us those tools that we need and the knowledge to use them. And now we can help others in their lives.
They went from snake oils to God's oils, right?
Exactly. How does that happen? I don't know, but that's how it happened, really.
I love it. I love it. No, so incredible, so amazing. And again, your ability to connect the dots. And I love, we talked about your strengths, your belief at number one, and wow, talk about it, just bringing that belief full circle. And if, for example, being able to walk into someone's home and say, "Hey, I know exactly what's wrong, and I know exactly what to do," and that's incredible to utilize the best version of yourself to go out there and change the world and improve the world. Kudos to what you guys have done, and obviously your son's a walking, a poster boy, poster child of that kind of intuition, that kind of commitment, and to see the results are amazing, amazing. Now, as we just, I love it. And thank you so much. You painted a beautiful picture of, what created, what your situation, what brought you guys, you and your husband choosing into it together, right? What a wonderful inspiration from a great mentor. Dave Sterling's like, listen, what's better than one is two. And I'm sure that was a good, fun little conversation there. But now, what happened? Because when we talked about your story, there was something that happened that all of a sudden, created this dip, if you will, this lull where, all this fire and passion and belief that you had in creating what you did, something changed. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I just, and again, it may be because my husband said, "Oh, you're just naive, Rachel. You think the whole world loves you and you love everybody." And he said, "That's not reality." And he'd kind of warn me, that I'm I think everybody loves me and I love everyone else. And that's my personality.
That's your woo. That's your woo.
Yeah, that's my woo.
Yep, just like me. Yep.
Yeah, everybody, like, who wouldn't want oils, right? And so again, we had hit diamond. We had been very successful. And I never flaunted, that I'm in doTERRA,
Sure.
but everybody knew it. And again, this was something that was hard for me because it wasn't somebody that didn't like me or that wasn't close to our family. But we had a situation that happened with some of our very dearest friends that would be over at our home, and they used oils as well. And it was just a different brand. It wasn't doTERRA. It was Now brand.
Sure.
And I never criticized that, "Oh, you've got Now brand. How terrible." I didn't, know none of that stuff going on. But we would just laugh and talk, and he would say, "What could you use peppermint?" And I was like, tell him what you could use peppermint for. And, we had this great, I thought,
Relationship.
Relationship. For years we'd had that. And then I think because of, there was some things happened where I was able to help their grandchild with digestive issues, and it made a little bit of like maybe jealousy, like, you think your oils are better than my Now brand oils.
Right.
So he poured out the oil in the bottle that I had given that had helped his granddaughter and put his in it, and she went back to having problems. And so I think it stirred up a little bit of maybe jealousy.
Sure. Sure. Human emotion, right? Real human emotion, right?
Yeah, it did. And so from there, it just kind of bred just a seed of discord with me. And here I am, still naive, had no clue he has even a problem with me. So
Sure.
I'm still just as bubbly as ever and happy and like,
plugging away, doing your thing,
doing my thing over there. And then I started realizing, my husband says, I think there's a problem, with this, because I started hearing, little tidbits. And I'm like, surely this isn't the case, right? This can't be a problem. But the more we realized there is a problem, and then it got to the place where it escalated to being something huge, even to as far as a church service that was totally. He had coordinated to talk to a visiting preacher about us and how that we were doing these terrible things in oils, and it just, and we were the song evangelist, and we had to be up there on the same, share the same, I'm the piano player, my husband's a song leader in the special singing, along with an evangelist that's coming in there and preaching.
Sure.
And we're sitting on the fourth row, and everything is blurted out. And my kids are sitting there looking at me like, he's talking about our family. Like this.
Oh no.
I mean, it was bad. And I can smile about it now
Sure.
because I've learned to forgive.
Yeah.
But that was a crushing time.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, this really, but what happened during that time is I started to bury my emotions.
Mm.
And if you've ever read the book about buried emotions never die, I think Boyd Truman's
Absolutely. Yes.
mother wrote that book.
Yeah.
And that is so true, because the very next service after this, this situation happened, I had to get up and act like nothing happened. And I had to go back on that piano bench, and my husband had to go back to lead and singing. So I just buried those emotions like, no, I'm fine. And people would that knew our situation, like, are you okay? Yep, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong with me. And I just put my smile on, and I went back to playing the piano, went back to doing our regular duties in the church, like absolutely nothing had happened at all. And then it escalated to another situation where this person that was our dear friend wrote a book. And not only sent it to everybody in the church, but to thousands of people in all kinds of different churches and all over the United States. And I remember walking out to my mailbox one day, and I opened a package, just like, what is this? And realizing this is a book that's written about me. He actually sent me a book as well. And I'm like, you are kidding me. Like, who all got this book? Like, and at this point, I'm feeling devastated because the thing with the church thing, I'm like, oh, it'll be okay. We'll just bury that emotion.
Sure.
I'll just put a smile on, and we're just going to keep on going. But when a book is written and it's sent out to thousands of people, like, I didn't want to show my face anymore. And I remember, and I'm the youth leader at the church. And so I have all these youth that are also getting the book. Everybody in the church gets the book, and I'm the youth leader. And I remember one mother came up to me. She says, my daughter was very sad to read all those things about you. Oh. And at this point, you're like, do you stand up and defend yourself?
Sure.
Or do you just let truth prevail? Like, surely they'll realize this isn't true, that I'm not a witch. I'm not, all these things in this book are not true about me. Yeah. But at the same time, you have to be very careful. And I didn't want to just go out, shaming his name either. Yeah. So what we tried to be quiet and just like, let's just see what happens. And so we lived in that for 7 years. Yeah. And still tried to hold our head above. And it's where I was just basically surviving. I had hid every emotion. I didn't even, I didn't show any emotions. I mean, sure, at home, the first little bit I cried about it, it hurt. It was crushing. It crushed my spirit. And yeah. I just like, I'm through. I'm through helping people. I will never go out and share DoTerra again. I'm through with it. Yeah. And, but at the same time, this was our full-time income. So like we had to maintain, we were diamond. We were very, very solid diamonds. Sure. So I had to try to maintain my group there. But I remember walking into my dad, he's a principal of the Christian school that I attended all my schooling. And I walked into his office one day at school, and I shut the door and I said, Dad, I am quitting DoTerra. Mm. And he said, you are? I was like, yeah, I'm through. I want to move to the other side of the world. I never want to see anybody, and I could feel this fear gripping me, because belief had been my number one strength. I believed, I still believed in the product. I still 100% believed in the opportunity, everything. But I was crushed. My spirit was crushed. I was broken. And my dad, he says, well, hold on just a minute. And he got a piece of paper out, and he said, okay, now we're going to write down every single person that's going to be affected when you quit DoTerra. Mm. He says, let's start making the list. He said, okay, now which mission, isn't going to get your support financially when you quit DoTerra? Because I was making some nice paychecks, and I was be able to do the things that we had dreamed of, helping different missions. And there was some big things that we were going to have to stop doing if we went back to an income that, my husband would be going back into construction and things like that, those things. Yeah. And so I looked up on my dad's wall, and he loves these sayings. He has sayings all over his, in his principal's
Well,
office.
it's a different thing
And
too.
and my eyes caught one, and it said, "Nothing God allows can hurt you unless you take the wrong attitude."
Mm,
My dad pointed it out. He said, "Rachel, yes, there's been terrible things said. There's been terrible things written, but you can't let this stop you. Don't let it get you bitter." And that was my dad's prayer, like, Rachel, don't let it get you bitter. Don't let it. But at the same time, as still, I'm young. I was still young at that point.
sure.
And, not knowing how to handle things. And I remember, pouring out my heart in prayer, like, Lord, I don't want to be bitter at this person. This
Yeah.
is somebody, and I told my dad, I said, it would have been better if it was somebody that actually hated us. I could take it better from somebody that hated us,
Right.
but to be somebody that would come over to our house several times a month and have suppers with us and that we loved, it
Yeah.
was harder. It was harder to deal with.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot of just a hard times through that time, through that process. And we ended up, we lived there for 5 more years, and then we decided, what, for even for our children, especially our daughter, you have a 12-year-old go through that, where a book's been written about your parents
Sure.
and peer pressure and things like that. So when she was about 16, we decided, it's time. We've lived under this long enough. Yes, we had support. Yes, there were a group of people that, believed in what we did and were not, but it was just that we just needed a fresh start.
Yeah.
So we decided at that point to move. So we moved away from everything and kind of started over again in our journey, and just moved to a place where we could actually, try to find healing.
Yeah.
And so we moved 10 hours away, and that's what kind of brought us to Indiana instead of North Carolina. And just kind of and again, there were still battles and things like that, but that's the next chapter.
And that's what's so, one of the things, so a couple things. Number one is when we look at our strengths, right? We look at things that we know about ourselves. So you have belief at number one, you have communication in there, you have positivity, you have activator, you have these very, in your story, in how you guys went to Diamond in the first place, all of your strengths were alive. They were coming to life. You were meeting people. You're walking into people's homes, being like, I can show you this, do these different things. I can help you. And you can see all of that coming to life. And then a situation like this happens. And me having positivity at number one, I can't tell you how many times in my life and I have woo at number two. And when I'm thinking, oh, you don't like me, I'm still putting a smile on my face, faking this emotion when deep down I'm like dying inside thinking, you don't like me, right? What did I do? And you can see how what happens there is we bury the best version of ourselves. We bury all this greatness, all these things that come out and come alive that create our success. When situations like this happen, we put a lid on them, right? We cap them, and we bury them, just like our talents, right? And in one of the things that in Gallup research, when they look at engagement in any kind of role, job, career, business, anything you're doing, when we're affected emotionally, mentally, and physically, which they call their well-being, we're actually 4 times less productive in that role in what we're doing. So think about that. Like, here you are magically productive in what you're doing, yet because of this whole scenario that was affecting you emotionally, mentally, right? All these things that were going on, your productivity in what you believed totally took a back seat. And I think
Oh, yeah.
that your story really beautifully connects those dots as to the impact when we, of what happens, even when we have success, even when we're out there changing the world and financially success and all these great things, relationships. But when things come in that really have this big of an influence, in the way we think, feel, and behave, they impact us, and they
Oh,
really have a dramatic impact in how we're moving forward or
yeah.
how we're reacting, what's going on.
And I agree with that, because it was like almost like I didn't even have any life left in me. Because I wanted to, my personality is to go out there and just make things happen.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden I had no desire. And it was like the very life had been sucked out of me
Wow.
through all this. And I went from, being very active in doTERRA to never. I mean, if I got one sign up a whole year, I was doing good. I mean, I was like, oh, I got to sign up today. And it'd be like, oh, that's the first one this whole year. And we're 9 months into the year. And it literally, I thought one sign up was really stretching it for me because I went from to just surviving
Sure.
basically and
Sure.
just trying my best to keep the team that I did have, because I didn't want to lose the diamond status because we needed that paycheck, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was hard. But I felt like coming here to Indiana and start hoping to start over again, hoping to but guess what? It followed us here.
Sure.
Because I was like, okay, we've left all of the drama 10 hours away. We're gonna be good. Let's start over again, right? And lo and behold, a couple of years after we were here, boom, here comes another letter to thousands of people again about me. I'm like, you're kidding me.
Wow. Here
We've
you are
done
making some decisions, right, to start fresh, start over,
it.
and even in a new place. And
Yeah.
that's got to be so difficult. So, you've again so beautifully that you talk about your rise, talk about that journey, end up where, this situation. How many years? Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought you said seven, right?
Yeah.
7 years. We're on average one person a year struggling after creating the success now. And then now today. So if we fast forward from where that is to today, just to give people a perspective, you're amongst, and don't be bashful, Rachel, because I think that your story is this is what makes it so inspiring. You went from, right, the rising experience you had because of your belief, your faith, your convictions, to again experiencing this dramatic lull and just this deep. It must have been some version of depression, right? If
Yeah.
you're not out there doing the things that you love, all of a sudden to where you're at today, you're one of the top enrollers right now in the entire company. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
That's right.
That's
And I think it was in November, we had 35 enrollments in the month of November, which is pretty good. And then my account manager, Jackson, texted me in December. He said, Rachel, do you realize you are the top in the US to get people on enrollments? You've gotten the most people on rewards orders in the month of December. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how did that happen? He says, well, because you're getting everybody on rewards, Rachel. Like, what are you doing?
right.
Um, and it shocked me really because again, I all of those years, 7 years of just nothing to all of a sudden I'm thriving in doTERRA. So from, surviving to thriving is what I call it. And
So
how did
what's
that
that gap? What happened there?
what happened during
Yeah.
that time? Okay. So again, we moved here and I started like let's make some connections because we really should start trying to build our business again. So we started doing a few things here in Indiana. And actually it was kind of funny because and this is just how God works, but every single time that an attack I call it an attack would be made at whether it was paper written or whatever it was that was going to be written because it was it wasn't I've mentioned a couple times, but it was over and over again, several, month after month. So every single time that happened, our check would like jump like thousands of dollars every single month. And I was like, is that God's way of just like confirming like you're okay, just keep going,
Yeah.
we got this.
Yeah.
But there was an attack that was made. And I looked at my husband, I says, does God want us to push to Blue Diamond this month? Here's this another paper and we'd already moved here and we were starting to, get things going here. And it's like, we can't let this get us down. So we end up, I was like, I think God wants us to go for Blue Diamond this month.
Mm,
And we'd already started this other leg. And sure enough, with ease, we made Blue Diamond that month.
mm.
And I think even back to this is how God orchestrated everything in our lives. So we went out there because we made it in time for the Blue Diamond Summit.
Mhm.
And Laura Jacobs and Natalie Goddard, they were pushing me like, come on, you can do it. You need to get out here to the summit. So we got out there, and at the same time, I was still so broken. I mean, yes, I had hit Blue Diamond. I wasn't even celebrating that because my fear was when I hit a new rank, when I hit something else, what else is going to be written? Like what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
So we hit that, and we were actually in the lab, and we were working in the, we were going through the tour of corporate, and we were in the lab, and Emily Wright just slipped over to us, and she said, are you and John going to be pushing for Founder 2.0? I said, no, absolutely not. I have no desire to hit blue or to be a founder. And she's like, why not? I said, I've already had a book written about me. I can't imagine what's going to happen if I actually put myself out there and try to do more.
Yeah.
She said, you're going to let what someone said about you stop you from achieving what God wants for you. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like,
Sure.
that's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I'm doing. So at that point, we had very, very few points. In fact, I was so embarrassed to be a Blue Diamond and have less than 100 points. And this was in December. Okay, this was in December. They were just making the announcement that, it's going to end in August.
Right.
I had less than 100 points. I was so embarrassed because Russell Butter comes up like, Rachel, how many points do you have? I'm like, I'm not really sure. I don't keep up with it. I don't want to hit founder, like none of this. And we sat around the breakfast table where he said, Rachel, you really need to push for it. And so everybody out there was encouraging me, like, you need to do this. And we sat around the table and somebody said, Rachel, have you ever thought about having some coaching to help you get out of this, this issue that you've had, this trauma, actually, it was trauma. And I was like, and I just remember telling her, I was like, nobody can help me with what I've dealt with. Nobody could help me over this. And so we actually decided at the breakfast table with Russell Butters, and after talking to Emily, that, you know what, why not go for Founder 2.0? So we were in a new area. Let's start. So we decided to push for Founder 2.0, and we successfully made that. We made it we started really pushing hard in January, and we hit it in June. So, I mean, we were on the roll. But at the same time, even during that time, I did not celebrate. I did not. I almost felt guilty for hitting Founder 2.0, for reaching Blue Diamond. Like, what is next? What's going to happen to us?
Sure.
So here we are at the very next Blue Diamond Summit, because we maintained Blue Diamond and was at the next Blue Diamond Summit. And we were sitting around the breakfast table again, and my friend said, did you ever reach out to Tamara Wren to get coaching? I was like, no. I said, she can't help me. She's like, no, seriously, you need to. Here's her number. Please, I promise you she can help you. I'm like, I don't think she can. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll call her when I get home. So this was in December, and I decided, let's give her a call. And so I called her, and just very monotone. This is what happened. Do you think you can help me? And we set up a session at the end of 2023 we were going to start the coaching. And I wasn't ready for I had no idea what this was going to involve, right?
Sure.
Because these were emotions that I had buried for 7 years. Yeah. I didn't want to feel those emotions. I didn't want to see that man. I didn't want to think about it. I just want to leave these all buried. I'm fine. I can put a smile on. I can fake it until I can make it. Yeah. I can put a fake smile on and somebody will think it's real. All right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna survive. I'm in survival mode. So the first session with us, she said, all right, your homework this week is to start writing out everything that happened from the very beginning, and just write everything out. And she said, this is going to be extremely hard on you, but only write 15 minutes. Spend 15 minutes a day on this. Mm. And my husband and I would be sitting there, I'd be writing, and I would say, when does the healing start? And I would be bawling my head off, because these were emotions that I had buried for 7 years. And I was like, when does this healing process start? Because right now, all I can do is bawl my head off, because I didn't even know and then, so, okay, we got through that part. Then the next session was, okay, now you're going to write what emotions you felt during this time. I was like, oh my goodness, she's going to think I'm mean. She's going to think I'm terrible. I was like, I was angry when and I put those emotions, wrote those emotions that I hadn't even let myself think about for so many years. But yes, I was angry with this person. Felt betrayal. I felt all those feelings. And so as I was writing those things out, I felt everything again. like, yes, I did feel that betrayal. I felt that, all of those feelings all over again. And so that was the session. And then the next time she said, okay, now it's time to write letters of forgiveness.
Mm.
I was like, oh, what a week this is going to be, right?
Right,
Right.
right, right, right.
But in my heart, I had been praying for years. I mean, for years, Lord, help me not to be bitter.
Mm.
I don't want to be bitter at this man.
Yeah,
I don't want that in my heart.
yeah.
Um, and so, and I have it right here on my phone. I just want to read. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but I want to read just a little excerpt of it, the last paragraph that I wrote. And it was from my heart, and I meant every word of it because, and I hope I can get through without crying, but it was really, I wanted over this.
Yeah.
I was so tired about that. By that point, I had dealt with this for 7 years.
Mm.
7 years of my life, I had let a person, steal from me, basically.
Sure.
Still, what could I have been in those 7 years? Like,
Still
where
time, still energy, still your belief, right? The best versions
exactly.
of yourself.
So I wanted to get to that place where I could truly, fully forgive him. So I'll read to you just the last part of it. It says, so with my whole heart, I choose to totally and completely forgive you for everything that was written and said. The devil meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. I never would have become the person I am today had it not been for the trials that I went through. The lives that we've touched have been so many, and there are so many people, more people that need help. I am choosing to forgive you because bitterness is like cancer.
Mm.
I cannot help others heal like I want to if I hang on to a bitter spirit. I wish you the very best and pray that you will truly find peace in your heart and that your own family will be healed. And I meant every single word of that. And that session with Tamara, I broke and I was sobbing during that time. I'm like, and she said, Rachel, you've forgiven him. And I felt like such a load of 7 years
Sure.
lifting from my shoulders. Like, if he walked in this door right now, I could go up to him and say, I forgive you. And one thing that Tamara had told me, she says, Rachel, you've carried this for 7 years. And until you let go of some of the stuff, she said, you have no room in your heart to be able to grow in doTERRA.
Yeah.
Because that was a lot. And
Sure.
I haven't even told everything. So just a little bit that you've heard, it was a lot. And so at that point, just forgiving him and opening, and at that point, I felt like my heart was just opened up where I could receive so much and give so much. And and Tamara will tell you, she said, Rachel, I feel like you're just kind of under a spout right now, and God's just pouring in blessing after blessing because right now it is so much. Like I'm like, how can I effectively help all the people that I need to help? I am on such a roll, like kind of unstoppable now because I have opened up my heart to forgiveness and I've forgiven the person that hurt me the worst. And there's love there. And when there's love there, you can do so much more and you can be so much more effective. And so that's basically how I went from not even knowing how to forgive to, you know, surviving to thriving is what I call it.
Thriving to thriving. That's, Rachel, so I'm over here feeling every bit of it, by the way. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. And again, I love your story. It's the passion, found success to like, oh, right, to back into it. And I think so many people along going back to the 3 feet of gold, right? We're so close to that breakthrough. We're so close to that thing we want, whether if it's our health, whether if it's finances, whether if it's relationships. And there's things that are holding us back. There's things that are holding back our well-being, our emotional well-being, mental well-being, all these things that are that play these massive parts. Now, in looking at your journey and going through this thing, because you went through so much, and I'm sure you could pinpoint all kinds of different things, but what would, if someone's watching this interview and stuff, and I'm sure if they were taking notes, they're gathering all kinds of stuff, what would be like a key moment or a key switch that played a real pivotal role in your journey, that allowed you, that really showed you something, that allowed you to become the person of that you are today? And I'm sure you could name a ton of them, but what would be one of them that you could really pinpoint on?
And I think just again, never, if I could go back in those 7 years and just not bury everything. You have to, you can't bury everything. You know what I'm saying?
You got to feel it, right?
You've got to feel those things, but then knowing how to cope with it, knowing how to forgive.
Yes.
And a lot of times we don't. We just start burying all these things and not talking about it, not expressing how we're feeling. And I think even in my circles, it was almost like, just get over it, Rachel.
Right,
Can
right.
you just get over it? But just opening up my heart
Mm,
to, when I began to again trust the process, like, okay, believe that this lady can help you. Believe that Tamara is she's a coach. She can help you through this. This was not something, I had never had coaching in my life.
yeah,
So to even open up to this was be like, people were like, Rachel, you can just get over this by yourself. You just need to forgive. But you can say, I forgive. But when it comes totally from the heart and you actually do forgive,
yeah,
that's something different.
yeah.
And so I would tell people, like, when big things do happen, don't let it crush your spirit.
Mm,
Don't let it define you. I personally chose to let that person define who I was becoming
sure.
the last 7 years. And then in 2023, when I decided enough is enough, actually the beginning of 2024 is when I started that. So this has only been a year and almost a year and a half of, we're coming into May.
Mhm.
So back in January of 2024 is when I started the coaching. And from then on, it has been like, the past year, I would say it has been transformation for our family.
Wow.
Um, and then even my own daughter had told me, she said, I never, ever want to do doTERRA, ever, because I've seen what you went through. And she saw the anguish and the heartache that it caused our family. She believed in the products, but never wanted the business.
Right.
But now, once she saw me actually open up my heart to forgiveness and letting the love flow in, now she's decided she wants to do the business with us.
Mm.
So in September, I'm at a convention and I started getting this messages like, hey, and she was fixing to be newly married. We've decided we want to do the business. I'm like, you're kidding me. But I don't think, if I would have held on to all of that grief and those things
That
that were,
pain, right? That
yeah,
emotion.
yeah. If I hadn't given those things up, she would have never wanted to do the business with us.
Sure.
And now they just hit platinum last month.
So inspiring. And that's one thing that I think that we don't, and I love going back to, what your dad said when you knocked on his office door, right? You shut the door and you're telling him you want to quit. And he asks you, make a list of all the people and all the things that are going to be impacted. And now you look at, years later, you look at, your daughter, someone you've raised, there's an emotional connection, not just to who she is, but to her success as well, right? You wish nothing but great things for your kids. And for her to maybe be hesitant on joining you on a journey because she looks at all that you've gone through, but because you've been able to make that shift, what an incredible visual, right? What an incredible perspective that your daughter has and says, "No, I'm inspired by my mom now. Look at what she went through. Look at what she did, and now look at where she's at. Heck yeah, I want to join her in this journey, right? Isn't that what we all want for our kids? I'm sure what God wants for us, right?
Yeah.
And here you are, what a great example of that journey that it's led to now posterity or new generations that are being inspired to join you on that process.
Yeah. And if I hadn't have opened up to forgiveness, there's been no way. Like, who would want to join somebody that is going to have that, even though I wasn't trying to be negative,
Sure.
and because I'm not a negative person, positivity is one of my top strengths. Like,
Right, right.
everything figure outable in my,
Yeah,
like, we can figure things out.
yeah,
But this was something that I couldn't figure out.
sure.
and I needed help. So for those that are watching, and maybe you have been through something big, maybe you've been something through bigger than what I've been through,
Yeah.
get the help you need.
Yeah.
Reach out to somebody, reach out to that coach and say, I actually do need help. And that was hard for me to admit that, you know, and even say, like, can the person really help me?
For sure.
You can help me. So for those watching, I would say absolutely believe in the process, get the help you need, and go thriving. And we are so blessed to be a part of doTERRA.
Mm.
The products have been a huge blessing. They've changed our lives, but the financial blessing as well. And now our goal is to, help thousands of more people learn and heal as well.
I love that. So, in going through your journey and going through that process, you've probably stepped into acknowledging, right, today what your superpower is, what you're great at. How does that affect you, and how does that influence you in leading your team, right? Because in your DoTerra business, you're not just helping people, get healthy or use oils or products and that sort of thing, but like you said, the financial aspect of it. So how does this journey, how does this process, how has this impacted you, your strengths and everything, help you to guide and lead your team, not just your daughter, but the people you're bringing up with you?
Yeah. And again, belief being number one, I know the products are going to work. There's no doubt about it. Um, and so I believe in the product, the opportunity. So I just go out and tell them, and a lot of times how I lead with, and a lot of my contacts are going to be one-on-one with people. I love to meet one-on-one with people, and just breathing belief in them in the products, and then the opportunity. So a lot of times, and I was just talking to someone this week about the business opportunity. And this is actually somebody who's been on my radar for a long time. And I'm like, okay, it's time to reach out to them. This is a person I want in my team. And so I called them up and just, said, I just want to talk to you about an opportunity I have for you. And I had no idea that this person was actually has been praying for months that
Wow.
God would bring in a side income for her. And so when I talked to her, and I told her about doTERRA, about the opportunity, the business opportunity that I would love to get in there and help her and show her the ropes and help her be successful.
Hmm.
And I said, if you need to take some time to pray about this before giving me an answer, that's fine. She says, Rachel, I don't need to pray. I've been praying for a month that
Wow.
God would open something up. And you give me this call. She said, I've been praying. I don't need to pray anymore. So as I go in there, I love to lead with getting people on foundation things, on things that's going to change their life. So I love leading with Laura Jacobs' 90-day program. And
Right.
that is one thing that I am pretty super successful at doing, because I know in that process, their lives are going to be changed. They're going to feel better. And so I had someone recently call me, and this is kind of funny because this was somebody from North Carolina that did not appreciate me very good. And there was many things said during this process. So I'm sure it was very humbling for her last weekend to call me and say, Rachel, I have this issue, this issue, this issue, and gave me this long list of issues. And she said, the doctor, and this is a young person, younger than I am, and said, the doctor's given me 5 to 6 years to get my life turned around, or I'm not going to be living. And I believe you're the one that can help me. I'm thinking, oh my word, I'm talking about the person that said many things about me, and it wasn't too kind. And I'm sure that was humbling to her. But
For
as
sure.
I see this is happening, more people are doing that. Those people that might have been against in the beginning when the things were said, the books were written. Um, Now people are like, actually, you know what? Maybe Rachel wasn't so crazy at all.
Yeah.
Maybe I do need her help. Maybe I do need. So
Yeah.
it was so this weekend, this happened literally this weekend. And I was able to just put the ball in the court in her court and said, you know what? I have something that will change your life. And here's the program. And it's like, here's the link if you decide you want to do it. Because I didn't think she would sign up. Like, sign up with me after all, all of the drama from
Yes.
the 7 years. Of like, there's no way she'll ever do it. Within a few hours, I got a notification. I'm like, oh my word, she actually did. And she can't wait to help, because her life will be changed. I know it will be because the products are phenomenal. And then, maybe she'll choose into the business. Some do, some don't. But those that choose to do the business, we have such an amazing opportunity, and we can lead with the products, lead with a 90-day program, get them changing people's lives. And like I said, even with the little boy that I was able to go in and say, like, oh, I know what your child's problem is.
Sure.
That's happened over and over again with certain things. And we have what the tools that
Yeah.
we can, and the knowledge that how to guide people. And it's just, it went from, thinking these are snake oils to absolutely this is God's gift to us.
Man, one of the things that I think especially when I get into strengths conversations with people, and you obviously having belief, communication, right, positivity, activator, these things, and the one in doing these interviews with so many different successful people in DoTerra, one of the things I found is that, and even though some of them have belief, I think only one other person even has belief in their top five. Definitely no one in belief at number one. But one thing that I do believe is that the commonality that I think that a lot of people can walk away from these interviews is that there is a level of conviction that I believe you and so many others have, whether if it's from a product perspective, emotions, relationships, business, financial freedom. There's a level of conviction that I hear in your voices, that I watch in your guys' activity, and I think that's a big thing that all of us, I think, that can duplicate, regardless of our strengths. How we go about doing that. But that's so inspiring to listen to, everything you're talking about and your conviction for those things that you've developed or that you've learned or that you've incorporated, right, in your life and through this process. And again, much like we talked about, PJ, a lot of people think that, because of who PJ is today and all the things in the books and the things she writes about oils and the complexity of it, that's how people start out. And it's not even close. She knew nothing, right? Same thing. Like here you are, you knew nothing about, we call them snake oils at the beginning, you're putting them, you're not even sure, you're not even convinced it's even going to work. You're just making someone happy about putting them on the bottoms of your son's feet. But through the development process of yourself and the things you're noticing, the things you're seeing and you're practicing, right? You've developed this unwavering conviction of what you're doing. And I think that's crucial for anyone, stepping into, anything really should really develop. Now, as an entrepreneur and in your journey and full of growth moments, looking back, anybody that is looking to maybe whether they're going to start their own journey or become an entrepreneur, what do you think, what's one of your most valuable lessons that you've learned that maybe you can share with someone along the way, if they're stuck or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say that don't let people's opinion of you and what you're doing crush your spirit, because everybody is not going to love what you do. And now I've realized that. And so a lot of times when, I just signed up in September, someone reached out to me and said, okay, I want to do the business with you. I've been watching you and what you're doing. And so I just was up front with her and I was like, you know what? Everybody is not going to love what you do.
Yeah.
So just be careful, guard your heart, and don't let it become so personal when someone doesn't love what you do. Just, keep there are other people out in the world that need you. So don't get so stuck on that one person that said no to you that you quit doTERRA, because they're going to be that. And now that I realize that, like, yeah, everybody doesn't love me, even though I think they should, because I love everybody, but everybody
Yeah.
love me. Or everybody doesn't love what I do, but I can't let that crush me anymore, because there is such a higher calling in life than to be worried about what people are going to say and think about you.
Yes.
We have, and there was another saying, I think that my dad gave me, and it was like, the only people that aren't going to be criticized, the only way not to be criticized is to do nothing and be nothing.
Mm.
If you just sit there and do nothing and be nothing, just sit there on a couch, but if you're out there making a difference in the world, you're going to be looked at.
Yeah.
You're going to be criticized. the only way not to have that is to sit there and do nothing and be nothing. But I'm not going to do that anymore. I did that for too long, and I'm past that. And it's time to let my light shine. Um, and also honoring God, because He's given us this business. He's
Sure.
given us the opportunity and the knowledge. And if we don't share that with others, you know, it's to the point now where if I am not out helping someone every couple of days, my husband said, "Okay, it's time for you to go ahead and go help somebody." Because it starts, I'm like, oh, you start, if you just think about you can get, if you get your eyes on just yourself. So my husband, okay, go help somebody. It's time for you to go out and make a difference in somebody's life today. And so I try to totally commit at least 2 or 3 days a week where I'm 100% helping, meeting people one-on-one at least 3 days out of the week and making a difference in their lives.
Mm.
And in turn, it's blessing my life. It's making me happy because I'm helping them, but it's changing their lives as well.
And you're building, correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably spent most of your time, all of your time when it comes time to enrolling or bringing new people in on one-on-ones, correct? It's not
Yeah.
like you have these massive online audience
I have zero online audience. Zero. Now there's only one person this month that I have signed up and that was the person in North Carolina.
yeah.
They called me on the phone and I just sent a link. Didn't think they would sign up, but I was like, I'll throw it out there. This is what you need to do. You need to start on the 90-day program. And she did. She's so excited and she's been texting me and so excited. But every other person I have met in person. And I love that need, just right there meeting their needs with them. So it's not an online presence. It's actually going out there instead of being that introvert and just staying hid away on the other side of the world where anybody knew me. Now I'm actually going out and, working off of referrals. So I'll tell people like, if you have any family or friends that need help, give me a call. So my phone goes off, I've got so many contacts or people just calling me like, "Hey, I've heard about you." And I think unless I would have gotten to the place where I would have been able to forgive, I wouldn't have been able to open my heart up for more
For
because
sure.
I didn't have room in my heart to get that blessing that God's given us now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm glad that that you share that in regards to the one-on-ones to enroll 35 people in the month of November, right? I think a lot of people think that in order to be successful in this business, you have to have an online presence, right? Or you need to be an influencer. And here you are changing lives and enrolling a ton of people because you're asking for referrals, you're meeting them belly to belly, you're addressing what their needs, you're listening, right? You're listening to what's going on in their life. And I love the advice that you gave because, having woo in your top 10, I think I saw it at number 7. I have woo at number 2. And, I could only relate to the fact, wait, of course I want everybody to like me, right? You said, no, you don't like me. Oh, I guess, never mind. Nobody's going to like what I put out there, right? And I think that's a massive fear, for a lot of us to have, woo so high. So I'm going to take that one from you as
Okay.
well. I'm gonna take that one and say, oh, that was directed to me.
Yeah.
So in wrapping this up, Rachel, again, I want to thank you so much for being vulnerable. I want to thank you so much for sharing. And I hope for anyone that has watched this interview, what an incredible journey you've been on. And I want to congratulate you on being so true in your convictions. I want to just use, going back to the word convictions, you're true to your convictions, who you are and your strengths, who are in your faith and your relationship to God, obviously going to your dad and listening for advice, your husband and you guys doing this together, your conviction and, putting, going back to the oils that helped your son experience, where he's at today to be able to go on the bike ride, he's been able to go on 15 years later. Your conviction towards helping each and every individual you connect with to the point of having 35 enrollments in 1 month through belly to belly, right? Not just some massive online class that you did. So in bringing, thank you for everything you shared, because I know I've inspired, I've shared a couple tidbits of your story with people. And I want to thank you for breaking it down because I really think that so many people can find value, whether they started doTerra 15 years ago like yourself and have struggled for a lot of that time, or if they just started today and they're like, how do I maximize who I am, or engage in this business. So in wrapping all of this up, what's, how do you want to end this? What would you like to, how do you want to leave this so that, when someone watches this, they're walking away with it and they keep that thing in their mind. What would you leave them with in wrapping this up?
Yeah, I would say just basically keep your focus. It's so easy to get distracted, and the noises over here, and you start get distracted on life. But if you keep your goal set, and I have a pretty big goal right now. I have some big dreams. I have some huge dreams, and we bought this property, 30 acres out here, and I have some huge dreams for this place. This is going to be called Acres of Hope, and we're going to help the world heal, because this was a place of healing for us.
Yeah.
And so I have this dream of all of these little tiny houses here where we can let people come in like a nonprofit thing, and let people learn to heal.
Love it.
And so keep your focus on the goal, and don't let negativity and the outside drama and the noises get you down, but keep your focus on the goal of whatever your goal is, and you can make it. But don't let anything ever just crush your spirit to the point where you just quit living your dream, because not living your full potential is not a happy place. Those 7 years were not a happy place, but
Right.
now I've stepped up to where I need to be. And now I'm happy. I'm fulfilling my purpose, my calling in life. Um, and there's nothing like that.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I value your time. Thank you so much for anyone that watched this interview, that has taken the time, and hopefully you've you've pulled some great nuggets out from her story and what she's been through, and you're in the process of forgiving, right? Managing those emotions, that mental state, really staying focused. I love that, and not hearing the noise, right? There's so much noise out there. There's so much distraction, so many people that are, that are used to maybe small-minded ideas, and you're talking about a big idea, right? You're talking about acres of hope and building this great dream, and I think that more of us need to surround ourselves with bigger thinking people, that provide bigger hopes into the world. So Rachel, again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and thank you for everyone that tuned in. Please continue to tune in, watch these interviews, add comments, leave notes, share them with someone that is looking for some inspiration, right? Share them with someone that is looking for hope, and what can they do differently? And just know, right? I love that you've beautifully demonstrated, how important it is for us to continue moving forward, and what's on the other side of just that little bit, right? What's on the other side of just keep going and staying engaged in what we're doing. So again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's been
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Have yourself a beautiful day. We'll talk
All
to you
right.
later.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.